how can we say it, that there is, my grandfather, well, a lot of people will say, so when things start up late or end late, they say it's running on Indian time. But the actual truth is, when I talked with my grandfather about it, he said that the indigenous people, or the Indians of old days, were that they used to arrive a day early, never late, a day early. So this way they could set up the tent, hobble the horses, feed the horses, and dress the horses. And so that this way, and then at the very end, everyone stayed right to the very end and even beyond, so that this way they could renew contracts, renew networking, and that kind of thing. And so that's one thing you'll learn about me, is that I take it that way, in the Indigenous way, and a lot of things, even for my own meetings here in the Diocese of Saskatoon, is that we have our meetings, they end when they end, and they begin when they begin. Which is kind of hard for me to fit into a agenda-driven world. But anyway, I digress. I'm going to start this morning with just a quick acknowledgement, and then I'll jump into a prayer, and then after that, an opening statement, and go right into the PowerPoint. And I'm going to try to move as quick as I can. I have a lot of material, since this is my last and get together with all of you. And so I just want to try to get as much information across as possible, and leave time for conversation, because dialogue, talking with each other, is the most important thing in all that we do. Here in the Diocese of Saskatoon, when we open up our meetings, we use what we call the Land Acknowledgement. And it sounds something like this. We who gather here today in ministry and service acknowledge that we gather on the traditional lands now known as Treaty 6 territory, on which we now sit. Our churches and communities are beneficiaries of this peace treaty. Treaty 6 upholds the traditional territories of many First Nations and the Métis people who have always called this territory home. We today honor and acknowledge this treaty, and may we seek to walk together with all nations in reconciliation, healing, and peace. The acknowledgement acknowledges that nothing was ever empty, and at the same time that we come into a land where people have resided before, where people have been before. And so, like I said, that's what we want to talk about today, about hope and reconciliation. So as we begin to come to the close on this, the third part of our conversation and the journey together, it's appropriate that we do this dialogue during the beginning of the Lenten season, because when we part our ways in another hour or so, I will leave you to look within and see what has opened, challenged you, and changed within you and your ministry as you go forward today. Everything that I have spoken about or presented on is from my personal perspective as First Nation, Indigenous, Native Indian, Aboriginal, Canadian. I spoke of my personal experience and what has been formative, both good and bad, in my own personal life. And if you seek, will find differing perspectives and differing points of view always, no matter who you talk to. Again, some good, some bad. But in the end, if you travel with someone and they speak and they tell you their life story, you for a short time will learn and grow, because you become blessed to share in the life and experience of another individual. Our collective history is that which we share together in both close and broad-reaching ways, but history is that which cannot be changed as it was yesterday. But we together can change what we do now and how we react and respond in the future by learning from others, from their experience, from their own wisdoms. Our history makes us who we are today, and history is supposed to be the great teacher, to whom we can learn from or ignore to our own folly. It would be akin to having a grand statuary in your front yard for all the world to see, but you yourself ignore, much the same way we do when we see the all too familiar memorials in our parks around our homes. We see them so often we ignore them and wonder when the tourists, when they gather to have their pictures taken in front of them, or when they seek your wisdom and wondering about the history and the deeper story behind the memorial in the front yard. It's up to each and every one of us to acknowledge, to understand, to be able to share the experience and the story of those to whom we have been chosen by opportunity or pushed into a journey with. In the beginning of the journey together, for us and our group here, and for those that are just joining now, welcome. And I now welcome you all again as my relatives in the family of God, the Almighty, our Creator. As we, the Indigenous people here in Canada, we know God, the Creator, by many differing names. In Plains Cree, my language, we call our Creator Manto. In the English language, it is printed out as Manitou. But language is vital to any dialogue, and so is our respect and forgiveness of each other as we together sit and share our stories. May we begin our journey together with a prayer. Let us pray. Almighty God, Heavenly Father, we thank you for the day that you have given to us. We thank you for the wonder as it rises in one part, it sets in another. And you remind us that in that journey of the circle, that we are all brought together again, and that you are one with us within that circle. We thank you for the family to which we have of all human beings. We ask that you open our hearts and our minds to new truths, to new ways, to new experiences, that these new involvements in our lives may change us and renew us, that we may be reconciled with each other, that in so doing, that we may walk together in a new hope, in new peace. Accept our gathering together today. May the words that we speak be ones of peace and invitation. May the opening of our hearts bring glory to your name. And may we together walk as one in the family that you have put upon this wonderful world. Be with us now, and all this we pray. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen. Now, I brought for you a PowerPoint. Hopefully I can get this all running here as I keep talking. And I am going to go like this. Bear with me as I do this, try to get this all back together again. There we are. Okay. And now I go back to Zoom. Boy, the technology you learn from all of this. Okay. There we are. And now I'm going to share screen. And share. All right. Can you see the slides? Okay. Can you see the screen there? Okay, good. Today we're going to be talking about reconciliation and hope. The words mean many things to many different people. And it's always about how we see things and how we perceive and how we reconcile things within our own hearts and what we are called to at the same time as Christians. I chose the passage, 2 Corinthians 5, 18 to 21. And all this is from God, who has reconciled us to himself through Christ and given us the ministry of reconciliation. Namely, God is reconciling the world to himself in Christ, not counting their trespasses against them and entrusting to us the message of reconciliation. So we are ambassadors for Christ. I think that's important to say again. So we are ambassadors for Christ, as if God were appealing through us. We implore you, on behalf of Christ, be reconciled to God. For our sake, he made him to be sin who did not know sin, so that we might become the righteousness of God in him. At the beginning of our gathering and our talks together, I introduced this picture that you see on your screen now. And the screen picture that you have is one that I had asked my wife to make because she's much more artistic than I. And so she took my Bible, which in fact you see right back here behind me. And she also put some of the elements that we use in Indigenous ministries, our own incense, if you will, in the bundle of sage that you see right behind the chalice, in the circle of the sweetgrass, and at the same time, all wrapped around the chalice, which holds so much import for each and every one of us as Christians and as Anglicans. And the eagle feather, which is a symbol of our prayers being lifted up and set on a green background, which is green is the color of life and of hope. I saw this the other day and I had to throw this in because it is such a beautiful picture. Where there is hope, there is faith. Where there is faith, miracles can happen. Today we're going to be talking about hope and reconciliation, which I need to say the only way I can, that they walk together. Hope is essential for every human being in life, and reconciliation, through, though it being a noun, if you look it up in the dictionary, maybe it needs to be more of a verb. Oh, I put a noun again. Okay, it needs to be a verb because it's something that we need to do. It's not something that we just use that can be a name of something that but it needs to be something that we actually do. Reconcile, to be reconciled, and reconciliation are those things that which we need to do with each other and before God, our Creator. And it's today that hope and reconciliation brought us together. It is our bridge of ministry that we can cross from the four corners of the world. None of us are perfect. We have not been perfected yet. And thus, we need to be reconciled with each other. We need to be reconciled to ourselves. After all, when you look in the mirror every morning, you got to say, I love that person. Why? Because God loves me. And when we remind ourselves of that God is with us, and that God has placed each and every one of us here for a purpose, we learn that we become bridge builders between that which is both heavenly and that which is earthly, between human beings, between families, between us. Here in Saskatoon, we call it the City of Bridges because we got 7 bridges that separate the south from the north part of Saskatoon. And I wanted to just illustrate that it's us coming together that can be that bridge. From all of you in the UK to here on us in Canada. Building bridges is important because it brings us together so that we may be able to journey with each other and to understand each other just a little bit better. And to know that no matter where we are, that we too can be servants. We too can be ministers. We too can bring holiness to wherever we are. I don't know if anyone's ever been able to see the Badlands here that we have in Canada or in the United States. And this is a beautiful picture of that. And it's in these places where there is not much of anything other than the rock, the heat, the sun, and the sand, that sometimes you find that quiet space that you need to find the holiness. It's important that we always continue to try to seek that all our lives. In a few seconds, I'm going to try. I'm trying. This is one thing about Zoom. You always try new things. So I'm going to try to bring you a video. I don't know. Let's see here. I'm just going to switch back out for a second. If Philip no, I think I forgot to mention that. Send off the link to the apology. Have you been able to see that yet?
Yeah, we sent out a link to the Doctrine of Discovery, Stolen Land, Stolen Hearts, but
Okay.
we haven't. Not one distinctly called the apology. Yeah.
Okay. I'll play that for you then, or I'll try to play it for you. If
Yeah.
not, I've got it written down on the screen also.
Sure.
And it's the apology is setting the context for it. Is the apology was made by Bishop Michael Pierce here in Canada when they gathered in Minneapolis, in Ontario, with the Indigenous leaders. And that was the first part where reconciliation started to happen here in Canada, in what we call the TRC, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which was a commission that was put together to help Canada become reconciled with its own history, and at the same time within the injuries that were done for the First Nations. And for some of that, I was able to talk about in the first two installments of our gathering together. And it is, the apology was given, and it was received by the elders, and they gave their response. It was a heartfelt, emotional response, and I've got a short 2-minute clip on that one. But I've also, like I said, following that, I will bring the written part up because I want you to hear the response. There's also another one, another link, which is the apology that was given by Archbishop Fred Hiltz, who at our General Synod 2019 made the apology for spiritual harm done to First Nations. And so I'll talk about a little bit more about that, but this is all about us listening, acknowledging, and in truth-seeking, healing, in prayerful walking together. But healing happens at many levels, local level, and we have to be wary of those empty words without action. It's much the same as an amazingly rousing, invitational and equipping sermon can send everybody out from the parish, send everybody out from the church with new energy, new hope, new excitement to go out and to do something amazing. And that's why it's got to be more than just words. It has to be action. Reconciliation is to be made right. What does reconciliation mean? And what can it look like? It is dependent upon us and how we see it. And so it begins with you and me. And so we walk together. So as this gets set up, this is all on your Anglican Church of Canada. You'll find a lot of resources there, and that's at www.anglican.ca. And those sites give you all these resources. The videos that you've seen before, which was Stolen Heart, Stolen Land, the Doctrine of Discovery, Terra Nullius, and others that have happened, and ones from ACIP, which we call Anglican Council of Indigenous Peoples. I don't know if it's just an Anglican thing. Maybe Bishop Sarah can answer that, whether we love all these acronyms, these little words, these little letters that we make up, whether it be ACIP or, the ACA, those kinds of things. Anyway, I leave it there. But I'm going to just try to play this quick video here. This is Archbishop, our Primate Michael Piers. This was back in 1993 on Friday, August 6th, and in Menaki, Ontario, as I said, at the convocation with the Indigenous peoples.
I have felt shame and humiliation as I listened to the stories of suffering inflicted by my own people, and as I think of the part that the church played in that suffering, I am deeply conscious of the sacredness of the stories that I have heard, and I hold in the highest honor those who have told them. I am sorry, more than I can say, that we were part of a system which took you and your children from home and family. I am sorry, more than I can say, that we tried to remake you in our image by taking from you your language and your signs of identity.
The apology itself was incredibly moving. The apology itself spoke about the reality that many of the Indigenous people here in Canada live with on a daily basis. The pains and the brokenness that are also being lived out on a daily basis. And it is about that, of being able to apologize, to be reconciled, and at the same time to try to come to a common understanding and acceptance and peace with each other and with the people around you. In Canada here, we had different processes of the reconciliation, and where we had a settlements, monetary settlements, and as we discovered that the money itself was never let's put it this way: money itself can never be a source of medicine, of healing, because money in itself is that which causes problems. Many of us remember the old saying that that the love of money is the root of all evil. Well, if it is that, then there's no way that it could ever be part of the healing process, especially for any wrongs done. There needs to be a deeper level of healing where each and every one of us, where we have been transgressed or we have transgressed against others, to be able to reconcile, to be able to say, I am sorry, I apologize, and to mean it from the heart. Not to just say words, but to actually live it out. And so I'm going to, since you're recording this, but I will leave these links for you. You have one on there, which is the apology for spiritual harm, which is in where our primate, Fred Hiltz, where he, at General Synod 2019, made the apology for spiritual harm done, for the loss of language, the loss of our traditional ways, the loss of our own spirituality, and our connection, because it becomes a part of who we are as individuals, our identity, and where we have so many people now wandering our streets here in Canada, Indigenous people who are lost, who have lost that connection to who they are and where they are, trying to reinvent themselves, and at the same time struggling from the day to day. And then also the reality and the response back from the General Synod 2019, the last link that I've put on the page there, which is the message from the elders, which speaks about how they have received these apologies, and that they don't see them as just empty words, much as the same as the Land Acknowledgement, which talks about the treaties that the government made with the Indigenous peoples to respect, to honor, and to acknowledge each other as fellow sojourners in this journey that we call life and faith. So like I said, I just wanted to share those videos with you and those links, and I will leave that as you've recorded it so that you can send those out for others to read. And then, of course, I'll give you my link email, so that this way, if you have a question later on, which as you read through them. But basically, this was his script that was written up following that apology from our primate, Michael Pearce, which talks about how what was done and how it happened, and the response, which is at the bottom, which I wanted to share with you. And it says, the response to the primate from the National Native Convention, delivered by Vi Smith on behalf of the elders and the participants in Menaki, Ontario, in Saturday, the August 7th of 1993. And where she said, on behalf of this gathering, we acknowledge and accept the apology of the primate that he has offered on behalf of the Anglican Church of Canada. It was offered from his heart with sincerity, sensitivity, compassion, and humility. We receive it in the same manner. We offer praise and thanks to our Creator for his courage. We know it wasn't easy. Let us keep him in our hearts and our prayers, that God will continue to give him the strength and the courage to continue with his tasks. This is what we are called to, each and every one of us, to seek reconciliation with our brothers and sisters, no matter where we are in this world. And at the same time, to speak about who we are and what we bring to the table. History is something that we cannot erase. We all know that. And at the same time, how we live in this present is what comes from in here. And that's why it is so important that we be reconciled as individuals before God. That we seek within that which is interrupting, that which is the stumbling block, that which is the difficult parts that we try to hide, and reconcile them with God, our Creator. But it's important for each and every one of us to try to understand who we are. Here in Canada, through the church, we've been building up what we call Indigenous ministries. And I put this, hope through Indigenous ministries is about listening to the voice of the Indigenous peoples and their need for ministry in their context, meeting them wherever they are in the journey of life and faith, and opening the journey to crossing the bridge of healing, to live in hope and peace. Indigenous ministries incorporate so many other things, and I've included the 94 calls to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, as they put these points. And I've only included 59 and 60 in this one, and where it says, we call upon church parties to the settlement agreement to develop ongoing educational strategies to ensure that their respective congregations learn about their church's role in colonization, the history and the legacy of residential schools, and why apologies to the former residential school students, their families, and communities are necessary. Call number 60. We call upon leaders of the church parties to the settlement agreement and all other faiths, in collaboration with Indigenous spiritual leaders, survivors, schools of theology, seminaries, and other religious training centers to develop and teach a curriculum for all student clergy and staff who work in Aboriginal communities on the need to respect Indigenous spirituality in its own right, the history and the legacy of residential schools and the roles of the church parties in that system, the history and the legacy of religious conflict in Aboriginal families and communities, and the responsibility that churches have to mitigate such conflicts and prevent spiritual violence. Indigenous Christian expression. It is so important that we understand context on what can be done and how we can do it, and it is so important on how it is used. Whether you are using the symbols of Indigenous ministries and practice. Philip, can you still see me on the side screen? Okay. Whether you use feathers, whether you use the music, Indigenous drumming music, whether you use the elements of sage, sweetgrass, whatever you use and how it is used, it is so important that you understand how it is contextually connected to a community. There's a word on everybody's lips which is often used today, which is called appropriation. To appropriate something and take it and make it your own, and meant and used out of the context to which it was originally intended. And that's why it's so important that we start to understand each other, acknowledgement and knowledge of history, to understand the present and respectfully walking together for a more faithful future. But to do that, we need to be able to talk to each other, and delicate, respectful balance of dialogue in the understanding the community and their faith expression, their practice. Now, even for myself, the only way I can say it is that not all Indigenous communities and not all First Nations practice, understand, and see things exactly the same. One time when I was in the United States, in the state of Oklahoma, we had gathered, that was the Four Corners for the Navajo Nation. And we gathered together and we had this beautiful cloth that you see right here. And it's the color of the four directions, which I talked about, I think it was in the first installment. And they had it laid out on a table, and that was our gathering place to bring all the nations from all First Nations from all the four corners. We had people from New Zealand, we had people from Hawaii, we had people through all the states up to the north in the Arctic. We had people from the islands, and we had even a couple of representatives from Brazil who had gathered at that place, and where we were talking about the First Nations, and they had the four direction colors, the black, white, yellow, and red, and they had them laid out on a table. And one of the elders from I think, I'm not exactly sure where it was, I think it was from Canada, complained to the Navajo elders that they had the colors wrong, they had them turned. And then and that's when one of the other elders had to come up and say, that's how they do it here. Since we are on their land, we will respect how they do it here. And that settled everything right there and then. And that's why it's all important to understand that not all First Nations practice and do things exactly the same way. Not all First Nations have the same rules and the same common practice and acceptance of common practice in the same way. So, as long as you understand that, as much as in your own context, as much as there's a ever so subtle difference between the Irish and the English, the Welsh and the English, or other Europeans. You understand that there is these subtle differences. And when we come into their territory, their community, we respect. It's much the same as with priests. When we come into, as a new priest, whenever I went into a new parish, the first thing that I did was I kept my mouth shut. I kept that wonderful weapon of mine, I kept it shut. And I opened these up, the ears, so that I could learn about who the people are, the community, and at the same time, how I could be part of that community. Rather than walking in and saying that my way is the right way, or my way, or the highway, however you want to say it, is not a way of invitation. But instead, as priests, we come in and we try to learn about the community, to become part of the community and to uplift the community, not to change the community, because the community has its own history, its own practice, its own understandings, its own stories. So again, not all communities or First Nations or nations practice or share the same stories and understanding. In the Indigenous communities, there's differences in the roles of elders, story keepers, and faith leaders. There's a delicate balance between, at the same time, the understanding of Christian and Indigenous spirituality for healing and identity. So since in Canada here, since the time of the residential schools, it caused a great rift between both the Indigenous spirituality and the Christian experience and expression. And so trying to bring those worlds back again, to build a bridge is up to and dependent upon and beholden upon those that are able to do those bringing of the community together. They become the bridge between the traditional Indigenous people and the new Indigenous Christian experience and expression. How much they will include, whether it be some of the old signs and symbols of feathers or drums, those kinds of things, whether they incorporate those or not. Interesting fact, when my travels, I've discovered that for the Indigenous reserves or the First Nations gathering where they call home, the closer they are to the Synod office, the more adherent they are to Christian practice. The further away they are from the Synod office, the more free and loose and experiences and expression that they incorporate. So it's kind of like, I know you're all going to be absolutely shocked, but when the bishops come to the parish, everything changes. Everyone puts on their best behavior. Everyone practices, then that's when all the parts of the service are back to exactly what the prayer books say and how we do our liturgy. The order or the order of service goes exactly back right to the very beginning of how it's so plain. But as soon as the bishop leaves, then we incorporate those little styles and practices that we incorporate in our own parishes. So, like I said, now one who wears the purple now, I know that because that's, I used to wear the black clergy. So there you are. But there is that delicate balance between Christian Indigenous spirituality for healing and identity. I don't know if you've ever been able to see incredible monuments, whether you go to the top of a mountain, which I have been, or whether you're in the deepest part of the valleys, here in the United States. They have the Grand Canyon, and which is an incredible place, and it's incredibly humbling, and it makes you realize how small we are as human beings. I know that I'm not alone and that anything is possible because God Almighty is with me and before me. And if you can start to see that all part of creation, whether it be human beings, whether it be part of this amazing world that we live in, you start to see that God, the Creator, is there in everything, with everything, and before us in all that we see. to understand and wonder about the formation of rocks and volcanoes, the Grand Canyons, those beautiful sights, amazing mountaintops, to be sitting above the clouds is incredibly humbling for us as human beings. So, faith in context. Truth, that ugly word that often a lot of people don't like. I remember one of my friends, as I said last time, one of my friends used to say, I deny your truth and your reality and substitute my own. Because it's often difficult how we can understand each other and see each other. And truth is that great reality that with each and every one of us. Truth is that we are called Christians, and that we as Christians are people of hope in the light of Christ. Faith is our vehicle of salvation, but it means doing something on our part, getting involved, stepping up, loving and forgiving. The Christian values which we are called to uphold and proclaim in the living faith. And we are called to reconciliation. We are called to be ambassadors of reconciliation, ambassadors of Christ. And that means learning from each other, sharing with each other, growing with each other, and at the same time walking with each other in new and wondrous ways. How we do this is up to us. What we bring is up to us. There are many different ways of our Christian faith. It's not something that we do just on a Sunday, but it's something that we do every day to learn and to grow. It becomes part of our identity. It becomes part of who we are as people of faith, as Anglicans. From around the world, of how we can share with each other and build each other up, pray for each other. Or as Christopher said, that, inviting people from all over the world to come into this wonderful platform and this forum here to be able to talk with each other, share with each other, grow with each other, learn from each other. For many of us that have been blessed to be able to travel. I spent some time in Africa, and incredibly humbling. I lived with the people. I didn't go to any resorts or anything else. I stayed in people's homes. I visited and I traveled through the Rift Valley, and at the same time just to see the different practices of the people, from the Maasai Mara to the Maasai people to all the different nations, and even going into Uganda, Tanzania, to be able to see the different sites and where God has created amazing things, from the Sahara Desert, the dunes, to the oceans. Give that away. That was mind-blowing for me to see that much water. I lived in the plains here most of my life, and the flat plains here in Saskatchewan and Alberta and Manitoba. And to see that much water was almost overwhelming. I don't know if you've, but it's just been amazing. And so even for my own journey, to be able to travel from, in Canada here, we have what we call the coast, East Coast, West Coast, and the North, coast to coast to coast. To be able to see the Arctic Ocean, to be able to see the Atlantic and the Pacific. Amazing and incredibly humbling. And that's why we're called to be ambassadors. Ambassadors of Christ. That means not just sitting at home, but doing something, a living faith that is proclaimed each and every day. But like I said, I wanted to hear a lot from you and to your questions. I wanted to try to get this in as much as I could in the very last part, rather than me giving an amazing sermon, which can easily go on for 6 days. But again, prayers are powerful, for they bring us together from all parts of the world. And prayers are powerful, for the Creator God listens to every word. So remember to pray and believe in the purpose and the call of what you are meant to be. Children of creation, children of God, our Creator, walking in love, honesty, respect, truth, courage, wisdom, and humility, which we call the grandfather's teachings here in the Indigenous communities. Again, those are love, honesty, respect, truth, courage, wisdom, and humility. Before and with all of creation. So in closing, I wanted to share a prayer with you as spoken and as documented by Chief Yellowhawk of the Sioux First Nation. Whoops. And it basically says this. Oh, Great Spirit, you who holds lands and whose breath gives life to all the world, hear me. I am small and weak. I need your strength and wisdom. Let me walk in beauty and make my eyes ever to behold the red and purple sunset. Make my hands respect the things that you have made and my ears sharp to hear your voice. Make me wise so that I may understand the things that you have taught my people. Let me learn the lessons that you have hidden in every leaf and rock. I seek strength, not to be superior to my brother, but to fight my greatest enemy, myself. Make me always ready to come to you with clean hands and straight eyes, so that when life fades as the fading sunset, my spirit will come to you without shame. I wanted to share a Cree prayer, and I've written the Cree word as well as the English translation. And this is the Cree prayer. Netawinan, kisimanto, wechienan mina, kanaweminan, anoch, kakisiaka, nianan kitawamisak, napeoak, napesak, iskiwak, iskiwasak, ekwa kakio, kotaktak, asiniwa kota, askiek, kita taheminan, hi hi. The elders always used to say when they were done, there is no such thing in Cree language as goodbye. There is no word that expresses anything other than that we will see each other again, or we will see each other later. There is no goodbye. And so they would always say at the very end, "Exe," which means I'm finished. So I just wanted to say this is an opportunity for your thoughts. You see a wonderful old traditional picture here. Quiet the mind and the soul will speak. And I've never been able to get my hair like that, as in this picture here, but it does have its own length. So I just wanted to take this moment and just to open up the floor and just to be able to answer questions as best as I can and respond to you and what you see. So I'm going to try to get out of this and stop share. There we are. Okay. Are we back to the same screen?
Yeah, we're back. I just wondered, I mean, you've taken us really into and onto holy ground, and we're so grateful. I just wondered if we might just have a little very short time within breakout groups, and if you wanted to just sit silently, sit silently, and maybe, or to perhaps formulate what kind of question you'd like to come back to, And this is going to be quite short, about 5 minutes altogether. So I'll just do that now in terms of the breakout rooms. And Bishop Chris, if you get allocated to one, it's up to you whether you want to go or if you'd like a little bit of breathing space to drink out of your kind of Episcopal mug, you know, feel free.
Okay. Or if not, you can always pull me out and move me around.
Okay, right.
Why are the two Paul Grateses on the screen? Can't have enough of a good thing, can you?
I'm very sorry. I'm sitting in front of the camera. My good lady is sitting in front of a tablet at the other side of the room, but they are both named me. In double.
You tell who rules the technology in that house, then, can't you? I left my group too fast. I was just in the middle of like organizing how we were going to put the questions forward, and then I just pressed the button that said leave meeting. Here they come.
That's great. Well, I think everyone's come back safely. Just kind of going around the screens here to check Bishop Chris is here and Bishop Sarah. Good. Just before we kind of proceed with questions that were raised, Denise, and incidentally, most grateful to Denise for the administration of the whole of this. There were a couple of, yep, we joined in, thank you very much. There were a couple of questions, weren't there, that were fed in at the last session. I don't know whether you've got those, whether you'd like
I'll
to
find them.
You'll find them. Well, shall we, I didn't, well, would anyone, we could go around the rooms in turn and just to see whether there's anyone from room 1 who'd like to feed in any comment or question.
Who was in room 1? I don't know which room we were
So
in.
that was Susan, Simon, Judy, and Jane.
So we had 3 really good questions, Philip. Would you like them?
Well, why not? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Sounds a bit daunting the way you put it, Simon.
Yeah, well, I think it might be. So Judy had a question about like how far this touched the ground in terms of the church in Canada. How many people know that this is going on and are able to kind of engage in it? Susan had a lovely question about what actions now, and it's probably a connected question actually, what actions now being taken to include those who have been disenfranchised so that there's more of a kind of level playing field, I think. And then Jane was kind of noting that the church in Canada had made an apology to First Nation Canadian people. Wondered that given that comes out of a kind of colonial tradition that Britain is absolutely mired in, whether British churches also had a place in that apology and how they would step into that, kind of stand alongside the Canadian churches in making that.
Ooh,
I
very
hope I
good
represented
question.
my group well.
Yeah.
Very good
Well,
question.
There's, yeah, no, well, I can see why you kind of hesitated slightly, and and it would be unfair of me to say which of those questions would you like to deal with. I just wanted to get a sense, because perhaps we could we just get a sense from the other groups of what they'd like, what you'd like to raise, whether there's any overlap with those questions. So perhaps in room 2, Joe, Lindsay, and Tony.
There were 2 main sort of bits of our conversation which I think probably do connect. One was about how we allow and appreciate a range of spirituality rather than trying to sort of get to the point where we've all got the same spirituality, and how we do that. And sort of something about how there was a question about language, so particularly the language that Bishop Chris was using, how comfortable people feel with Great Spirit and those kind of languages, and where that fits in with Christian doctrine, and a little bit of reflection, Bishop Chris, on how you work those 2 things and are faithful to both, is what sort of came across. And then we sort of arrived at the point that until we focus on some of that stuff and not all the things we tend to focus on, we're going to be struggling a bit, and then we've just got cut off at that point.
Right. Well, I mean, that's 2 groups that fit an awful lot into 5 minutes. I'm very impressed. Can we hear from room 3, Martin, Nikki, and Steve? Yeah.
I think we had some overlap. We had a conversation about colonialism and the colonization of the mind, both as experienced as people from colonies. So Pamela was inputting into that very, very capably, but also actually those who are from the colonial cultures, that we've all had our minds colonialized, and there's a system in there of colonialization. Nikki may want to speak some more. She was talking about a book she had read. Do you want to hold the book up, Nikki? which was about someone's experiences. Carry on, Nikki.
Can you see that?
Yeah, just about. Yeah.
Well, I heard the owl call my name. It's essentially it's a book about vocation, which I was recommended to read, but it's set in British Columbia. It's about a young Anglican priest who goes out to work with in a First Nation village in British Columbia. And it was written actually in 1967. It's by somebody called Margaret Craven, and I cannot tell from that name whether she is herself a First Nation person or not. And that's where the whole thing came in. Are we getting this through the eyes of a white woman, or is this, who's telling this? Who's telling this story? Because in it, the view of the residential schools, for instance, is a good deal more positive than we've been hearing. And I'm just thinking, well, how does that come about? I don't know if Bishop Chris is familiar with this at all.
And very lastly, a question about appropriation. And this comes from my Forest Church angle. So I'm very aware that people in the US who are into Forest Church are primarily immigrant communities from Europe. And what they tend to do is express Forest Church in the land of the Americas in Celtic Christian tradition, which is the tradition that comes out of the soil of Britain and is, of course, not indigenous to the soil of the Americas. But I recognize there is a danger of them saying, well, because we are on this soil, we need to learn the indigenous religion of this soil, that potentially becomes an appropriation and a removal of context. So I just wanted to raise that question.
Very grateful, Steve. We've got two other groups, and I just think it is really helpful to just get a sense of the responses that there have been and the questions that are raised, although clearly Bishop Chris is going to have to be very selective and choose what you want to come in on. So group 4, that's Charlotte and Millie, Christopher Walker and Martin.
Okay, we just were beginning, really at the beginning of the questions, having tried to find out about each other. One of the things was how does he reconcile, rather similar to the second group, reconcile the different spiritualities between the indigenous community and himself, e.g. like the stories of creation. The Christian one is much more negative. They were cast out of the Garden of Eden. The indigenous ones seem to be much more positive and life affirming. So I was just wondering how he crosses that boundary, those differences, very similar to what they were asking in the first one. Have I picked that up, Chris and Millie, Charlotte?
Yep, I think they're okay with that. Actually, it's 2 more rooms still. Denise and iPad and Margaret. And any comments? Marjorie, of course it is.
Yes.
Thanks.
Yeah. Go on, Marjorie.
Yes, I have a question, and it's yes, the Anglican Church has obviously played a huge part in this process of reconciliation. What other denominations are contributing to this?
Thank you. And the 6th group, along with Bishop Chris, Jessica and Wendy, you'd have heard directly any answers you needed in that group. Is that okay? That probably,
Philip,
yes.
can I just say the 2 email questions were, how is the church equipped to help bring about atonement? And what percentage of the First Nation are Christians in the Anglican Church?
Okay. I think we may find some of these questions have a kind of fairly quick answer that we might even get, I was going to say retrospectively. Bishop Chris, in the 10 minutes that we've got, where would you like to start?
I'll try to answer as best as I can most of these questions. When we're talking about how the balance between trying to bring both the Christian and the Indigenous spirituality at the same time, trying to balance both how we do things in practice, the best way to say it is that there are a lot of commonalities which take us into this journey. So for example, when we're doing a smudging ceremony where the smoke is being lifted up and where we use the feathers as a symbol of our prayers lifting, being raised up, and at the same time of fanning the sweetgrass and sage, which are part of the prayer. So it's much the same as what we use in the church for some of your parishes where they use incense, frankincense, myrrh, and all the spices, which bring this beautiful smell into the church. So we use the sage, we use the sweetgrass because we didn't have frankincense and myrrh, needless to say. And so those are the natural perfumes that we used to try to, again, bring our prayers and our thanksgiving towards our ministry. So there's a lot of commonalities. Another one is the the Serum Prayer, which is God be in my thinking, in my head, God be in my eyes, God be in my mouth, God be in my heart. And it's, believe it or not, it's the same prayer, that same prayer from, what was it, 1576, I think it is. I don't want to put Bishop Sarah on the spot here, but I think it's about 1756 that's the Serum Prayer was actually put into place and brought. But the Indigenous people have always used that prayer, believe it or not. We've always used that prayer when we take the smoke or the sweetgrass and the sage, and we're using it and we call smudging, and we go, Creator God, be in my thinking, and be in my thinking, that I may think only of good things. Be in my eyes that I may see straight and clear. Be in my mouth that I may speak peace. Be in my heart that I may be peace, and be with me in my journey as I go out into the world. Simple prayers, the commonalities. And so those things make it a little bit easier for me trying to, how can I say this, to balance that, both the Christian of who I am as Christian, as an Anglican, and at the same time, who I am also as an Indigenous man. And so it's important that I try to bring that balance and peace. Now, as I said, not everybody is the same. So I've always had to be that bridge builder to reconcile both my traditional practices and at the same time the Christian, and try to bring them into one place where we can actually worship, and which we, wonderful place we call our church home and faith. So these are the things that I try to work with all the time, and trying to balance those out, because I've met with a lot of angry traditional Indigenous people who are very angry at the church, and who are very angry about the history and what has been done to them. And they live in that anger. And I try to be that bridge of peace to bring healing and reconciliation. And that's the only way we can do this. Not only the Anglican Church, but also at the same time, other faiths that are always around. But there's a lot of work to be done. And especially here in Canada, where we have a huge contingent, a huge population of Indigenous peoples. And as I said, so for example, just give you a quick slice, is that, okay, let me think here. Biggest city, Toronto, Ontario here. We have population of roughly, I think it's roughly just about 3 million people, I think, thereabouts. And in the 2011, I think it was the last long census that was done, they found that there was roughly about 176,000 Indigenous people that lived in the city of Toronto. And of the 176,000 people, that only a small percentage of them actually came to church. Even though by population, since we had mostly Roman Catholic and mostly Anglican missionaries, most of the churches on reserves are Anglican and Anglican Roman Catholic. And so that brings us that a lot of the people of the Indigenous people have been baptized as Anglican or Roman Catholic, a huge number. But now, the other faiths have now come into the reserves, and other faiths are now being expressed. For example, Pentecostal, Baptist, Evangelist, Missional, and so it goes on and on. And so they've come, a lot of Protestant faiths have now come in. But this is an expression of how important it is for us to be reconciled to our brothers and sisters, especially through history, especially through the church, and what we try to do. But it starts at the grassroots level. It starts with exactly what we're doing right here, of reconciling each other, learning from each other, and learning to grow. The colonial practice of how it was, that as the apology went with our primate Michael Piers at that time, and where he said, I am sorry that we tried to make you in our image. Very powerful word, because it made us realize that is what we have done a lot of times, especially through colonial practice, is we've tried to remake the people into our image. If we're not satisfied with ourselves, how can we be satisfied, with others who are different from us? And this is where we start to try to realize and accept and understand each other as family. The day that we can start saying that I am a Christian, I am a Christian first, but I practice as an Anglican, I practice as a Lutheran, I practice and it goes on and on and on. we need to understand that first and foremost, the faith lives in us, and how we live it and make it a living faith is so vital and so important. The other thing about, especially with the, yes, there are especially in the talk about, I think, Steve, that you mentioned about the forest church in the United States, and how it's blended in with the Celtic practice and spirituality, and at the same time how it is also embraced and brought in and embraced and brought in the Indigenous spirituality. So for example, in the Indigenous spirituality, we recognize that that we are not here to dominate over creation, because that's not been working too well for us, but instead that we are part of creation. That we need the plants, we need the trees, we need the water, we need everything around us, otherwise we don't exist. If we can't feed ourselves from the blessings of God, our Creator, from the blessings of all that is around us in nature that offers up to us, the gardens. And that's why with Indigenous spirituality, you give thanks for absolutely everything. You give thanks for the rising of the sun. You give thanks for the land, the food, people, your relatives, your health. And it goes on and on. It sounds like a common day prayer that each and every one of us pray. And so that's one of the reasons that it's so important for us to understand each other, especially in the way that we use things, the way we accept ourselves and place ourselves within God's creation. As for the language about what we use, understand that, that God cannot be held to a single identity. If I was to ask each and every one of you, what does God look like? There'd be so many wonderful, beautiful stories. It would make me cry, because each and every one of us, God is a personal attribute who is part of us also. Whether we see God as that grand old elder with the long, beautiful snow white hair and snow white beard sitting on this grand imperial throne, or else somebody that sits right beside us. Who is God? And God then goes by different names, whether it be Lord, Adonai, Yahweh. There's so many, Manto, God, Creator. To be able to say the same things again, that God, the Creator who made all things, the Alpha, the Omega, Yahweh, Adonai, Lord. So it is up to us how we express our faith, how we say our prayers, and how we say and open our minds to see that God is limited beyond the anthropomorphic, I love that big word, anthropomorphic stamp that we put upon God, that God, that is limited to this. God is so much more than we can ever imagine or understand. But it's at the same time, we need to constantly work to try to find out where we are in our thoughts, in our thinking, our minds, of trying to understand, and how basically careful we have to be to try to reach out to all the people around us and express our faith of love, forgiveness, reconciliation, and hope. This is part of our living faith that we live out and we share with each and every one of us today, and that you are servants of that ministry. I get to say this on behalf of everyone who wears a collar, is that your ministry is vitally important too, because you are the church. You are the faith, a living faith going out into the world. So much more than we can ever do as priests and as bishops. You are the living church. No pressure, but people are looking at you. And that's one of the reasons and dangers that we, depending on how you live your life, express your faith life and everything else, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren will be able to say, that's why I go to church. That's why I go to church, because grandma, papa, whatever, they brought me to the church. Or else, contrary, that's why I don't go to church, because they were so miserable. So there it is. So I kind of touched as much as I could on all the questions that I could remember and the things that I wrote down on my notepad as you were talking there, Philip. But I pray for forgiveness from all of you. I know I didn't get all the answers to the depth that you wanted me to, but
that's been really, really helpful. And I think you kind of touched on an amazing number of the issues that were raised. I just wondering, in terms of clarification, there was I think possibly the first question was about touching ground or being a reality in the church in Canada, an appreciation of the First Nation issues. I was wondering, to what extent do you feel it is owned across the province within the Anglican Church?
We need to do so much more. It is still a struggle. It is still, our primate has sent out a request that every diocese needs to start working on reconciliation here, as well as battling racism. We live with these all too human frailties and weaknesses of our own. And it is something that we struggle with every day. We are by no means perfect. We still have homelessness. We still have addictions. We still have broken families, issues of addictions, everything that is so common and prevalent. And a lot of it stems back to racism. A lot of it stems back to the conflicts that we have as individuals and human beings of recognizing and accepting each other for who we are. And that's why I say it starts with us. Every church, every denomination has been at different levels in this journey. Not all have accepted the 94 calls to action, which was put out by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. But at the same time, I have to condemn our own federal government here in Canada. Because believe it or not, every nation in the United Nations has accepted the rights of Indigenous people, what we call UNDRIP. There's another one for everyone. The United Nations Declarations of Rights of Indigenous Peoples, UNDRIP. And it was, as one who was blessed to be able to go to the United Nations and to do a presentation on that, to have the United Nations accept UNDRIP, but Canada has not yet signed on. So which means in Canada, my own country here in Canada, I'm still not accepted as an Indigenous person. Do you see what I mean? There's a lot of work that needs to be done. We still don't have the rights. And the treaties that we signed in good faith with the federal government of Canada still are being whittled away at and taken down. Now, before I get into too much politics, which everyone knows you love your bishops to be very political, I have to challenge our federal government, and I have to challenge the leaders. There was just a report just a short while back where on the Crown lands, as the lands that are given to the Indigenous peoples, that the resource companies are still trespassing and still doing whatever they want. Because why? Well, it's only Indians. Come on. And that's the attitude. So there's still a lot of people that that we need to work with, and that need to learn about their neighbors, and learn about the new practices, learn about change, learn about who we are as Indigenous peoples. So like I said, I don't want to get into too much politics, but there we are.
No, well, thank you so much indeed for what the direction you're kind of pointing us in, and what you shared there. I'm afraid we're going to have to bring that discussion element to an end, and I'd like to ask Bishop Sarah just to respond and give some words as we draw to a close. So over to you, Bishop Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. Bishop Chris, you pointed us to the Serum Prayer from the Book of Hours. God be in my head and in my thinking. God be in my eyes and in my looking. God be in my mouth and in my speaking. God be in my heart and in my understanding. And I just want to personally thank you, and thank you on behalf of Bishop Michael and Bishop Clive and all those who are here today for all that you've shared with us and for your honesty and your openness. I want to thank you for leading us into such a real encounter with one another under God. I want to thank you for enabling dialogue and learning and helping us to make another step along the journey of growth. You've reminded us that we are the family of God across the world, that we're called to walk together with open hearts and into a new hope together. And you've reminded us that it's important that we hear one another in that journey, that we travel together in love and forgiveness, reconciliation and hope. And it's my prayer that we do that as we move forward together. And we really look forward to the time when we can be together in person and not together over a screen, that we can share communion together. But thank you so much for all that you have shared with us today. It's been a great blessing to be a part of this. And I think that all of us would want to share our thanks for that. So bless you and thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Bishop Sarah. Bishop Chris, could you bless us, please? You have blessed us, but bless us in another way. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. To all of you, before I do so, I want to thank you for who you are and the wonderful ministry you bring to this world. As I always say, that there is no small ministry. There is no small purpose. All of you are here for a reason. You're not here by an accident. That God has blessed us, blessed the world with you. Don't ever forget that. Don't ever minimize yourself or put yourself down. Because when you do so, you put God, our Creator, down. You are special. You are beautiful. And without you, the world would not turn. Don't ever forget that. I want to thank you for letting me into your homes. Where else can you say you can legally do this, look into people's homes from all around the world, but only through this platform, this format? I thank you for your smiles. I thank you for your tears. And especially thank you for your prayers. There's so much work to be done. Even the Lord said, the harvest is ready. And so for each and every one of us, go out with a living faith. Proclaim your faith in everything that you say and do. Be peace in a world full of conflict. Be that hope for those who are hopeless. And bless as you are blessed. May you go with the blessing today. The blessing of God Almighty, the blessing of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit be upon you, your homes, your ministry this day and all days ahead. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Bishop Chris. I just wanted to close by sharing a screen picture here. Can you put your thumbs up if this has come through on the screen share? Good. Just a couple of slides really for you, Bishop Chris, by way of, and I hope we haven't done some unhelpful appropriation with the 4 colors here.
That's perfect.
But we wanted these are just some of the sort of feedback that we've had. I'm not going to read them out now, but we'll sort of send this as a card to you to accompany the Celtic creation cross that we have sent your way too. And the other slide with the wild geese, which, as you know, for somehow bridges spiritualities as a sign of the Celtic sign of the Holy Spirit, and comments that you've made and other people have made, and this comes just as a little token of profound appreciation for the world that you've taken us into. So thank you so much. And I'm hoping that you've sort of set the bar very high. I mean, not only in terms of content for the mind, but content for the heart, you know, at all levels. But we are hoping to have a number of other contributors in future months, and so we'll keep people informed about that. And so thank you all very, very much indeed for taking part in this experience. Thank you. Bye.
So from me to all of you, and from my family, God bless you, my relatives.
Yeah.
Look after yourselves. And I too look very much forward to the day that we can get together and see each other in person. And if we do meet, don't be afraid to give me a hug. I love hugs. So, and I think that'll be the greatest celebration as human beings, because nowadays we can't even touch each other and all that kind of stuff. When we get back to that, you know, the new normal and everything else, and we get to hug each other, it's going to be glorious. We'll give a Thanksgiving prayer together. Denise, thank you very, very much for everything that you've done to set this up and to work with our limitations in technology. As you know, the new sign and everything else of Thanksgiving. But to all of you, and like I said, thank you very much for your questions. And I think, Philip, have you given out my email?
Are you happy for me to do that?
If you want, I've got it on the website, so it's
yeah,
there.
Yeah, no, certainly. No,
but like I said, I would love to hear from you. And like I said, I pray for the day that we get to sit down and we get to either share a cup of coffee, tea, or something more invigorating. I don't mind. So whatever it is. So in the meantime, between time, all those that have been in my little groups and breakout rooms, God bless you all. It was wonderful talking with you, wonderful sharing with you, and wonderful visiting. Ta-da.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Philip, what I'll try to do is I'll try to send you the link with all my my books, which I think might be a little bit of either helpful or else if not that, just a great resource just to take a look at.
Yes, please. Yeah.
I've got some about old stories about the Indigenous, from the Indigenous elders. I've got books on that of traditions of how they came to be.
Yeah.
Why we do what we do and stuff like that. And you know, like I said, you know, if you want to know more, I can you know, talk to you about the differences that we have between, even here in Canada, between the Oji Cree, the Ojibwe, the Mi'kmaq, going out to the Haida, to the north, to the Arctic, to the Innu, the Inuk people, and even for the Plains Cree, and how we came to be and why we do.
Yeah, that would be really good. And I can see that Nikki's endorsing that. She was heartbroken that not, you know, was going to be part of the group coming out in March. And but no, that would be excellent. And Bishop Sarah did ask about the PowerPoint slides that you shared both this time and the previous time. Could you send those across to us? I mean, I know we've recorded it in a video format, but would that be possible?
Yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I can do that. And so I'll send the PowerPoints as well as the book and the ISBNs to all those books, and where you can do your own searches and involvement. Some of them in there. So another one I think is there's a Indigenous prophet, if you will. it's called Black Elk Speaks. If you want to write that down, or
Yeah.
Margaret, Christopher. So that this way, it's called Black Elk Speaks, and it speaks a little bit about, how, where he said that there will be people who will come across the big water, the great water, and who will bring the Indigenous people both hardship, but also blessings.
Mm.
And that they will bring the Indigenous people into the new generation. And at the same time, we're talking about the 7 generations and that's what we're coming up to. My grandchildren will be the 7th generation, and where that will mark a significant change in the Indigenous peoples.
Wow. Yeah.
But like I said, there's so many different little stories, and there's so many different ways of looking at things and seeing things. I think whatever resources, if they are through the books and stuff like that you find, if you can use those, that would be great. As well as there's also language books too, that you can learn about how to speak Cree and how to speak Ojibwe, how to speak Haida.
But I think what we've had with you is we've had that message sort of embodied and enfleshed, and that's just been such a gift. So thank you. I did want to ask, because you mentioned, I think last time you went to a meeting of the clergy after being with us, and I said, and I would really like to explore ways in which people from our diocese, particularly clergy, but perhaps lay leaders too, could connect maybe at a friendship level, and particularly with the benefits of Zoom and so on, because I think it is, as you've underlined, it is this sense of friendship and of being interconnected, and without all the fuss of going on the flight and the environmental implications and all this. And I just wondered whether that is something that we could take forwards, and if so, how we would do that.
Sure, that's something you and I could dialogue about, because there is something amazing about collegiality, whether, especially being able to do it this way. That is so vital to be able to learn from each other. Just for all of you that are on the screen here, when they put the purple shirt on you and they put that beautiful, incredibly stylish hat that bishops get to wear, it does not give you all the wisdom that is ever needed for the world, but instead all it does is it humbles you to realize that you are marked out to learn more. And that means that you have to reach out and speak with everybody, listen to everybody, and have an open heart. And I think any bishop that ever says, I am and I know it all, I don't need to know anymore, is incredibly problematic, and it becomes a very troubled place.
Yeah.
Because then you set yourself up on your own pedestal very, very high, much the same as the Desert Fathers and the Ascetics. I used to sit up on the pole. I would love to do that one day. Just sitting there in the elements and wondering, why am I doing this, Lord?
Yeah. I think.
Could I just step in, Philip, just to ask? Something else that we've been thinking about is our church schools here in the UK need to learn about faith in other countries. And so while you're thinking about books, maybe if you just thought about anything that might be useful to those schools, but also how we might create some kind of link in that direction as well, would be helpful.
There's so many possibilities, and just being able to do this. But like I said, what other time in another age could we ever do this? That where me here in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, could have come to all of your homes. And much less at the same time to be able to have this resource and to be able to share with each other and grow in so many ways. There's so many opportunities. I would love to be able to join and do as much as I can. So, but Denise, think about those, put it down on paper. That's the hardest part about putting anything, is putting it down on paper and planning out the logistics of how we're going to incorporate it and implement it.
I'm afraid I'm like that, which is why I like working with Denise, because she's a bit more practical.
Good on you, Denise.
Give you a warning now, Denise. If a bidding war will to try to scoop you up and get you out here to to Saskatoon.
Dude,
Come with
yeah.
me. God
Well,
bless.
there you are.
Lovely. Yeah.
Now, one thing you can't do is go and book the ticket. Oh, no.
But-
I do
and
think-
even there, just amazing work, Christopher, for what you're doing and trying to bring the world together. God bless you. The
Oh,
world
bless you,
needs
thank
more
you.
of that.
I think this is such a, and all the chaos that's around, this Zoom thing has turned into a real blessing. You know, it's a real ability to make connection. And
Absolutely.
I'm just thrilled by it. And I have to say, thrilled by what you've been for us. Bless you.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Yeah.
But like I said, keep me in the loop if you'd love me to be part of that. Send me an invite. I'd love to do that.
Thank you. The whole creation thing, we could have had a whole session on it, because that's kind of quite big, increasingly big, isn't it? And globally and within our culture, people like Steve Hollinghurst are really taking that forward. But I just wanted, and it's a very sort of particular kind of gift. I'm just going to walk into the garden with my laptop just to give you the gift of a bit of Staffordshire countryside on a late sort of February afternoon as the sun's going down. So let's see what we can see.
Me, I didn't want to depress you with about the 2 feet of snow that we have still outside on the deck. So,
My goodness.
oh my.
Hang on, I'll just press the oh no, where's the, I don't know where it's gone.
That's all right.
There you
Can
go.
you
We
see?
can see.
Oh, it's beautiful. What a lovely sky. And this is why in the creation stories, we need to recognize that we are under one sky. And how important it is that we recognize that the same air that we breathe is through the same beautiful trees, the same parts of all creation that draws us together and gives us life. I was always taught you give appreciation for absolutely everything, even the grass under your feet. I don't know the last time you've ever said thank you to the grass, because it supports you, and at the same time, it rejoices in just little moments that you acknowledge it. So
It's amazingly muddy here.
Good. Well, that's a bit of Staffordshire countryside for you. And
we've got a momentary moment of trying to get warm here. So it's supposed to get up to about +1, +3 degrees Celsius here today, but it's only short-lived. And then in a couple of days, we're back down to -19 Celsius. And then after that, hopefully it doesn't get back down to -46 like it did for the last month or so.
Oh, fantastic. Good. Well, I hope the rest of your day goes well, Bishop Chris.
Thank
And
you so much.
Thank you.
I think you said there's no way to say goodbye. It's just I'm off or something.
Yeah. In the Cree language, there is no goodbye. There is no goodbye, and that's one of the reasons that even when you phone, for example, even when you phone the elders and you're talking with your grandparents and stuff like that, they never say goodbye to you. Whenever they're done, they say exit and they hang up on you. You're never sure if you've upset them or not, but they just hang up. You're done.
Oh, that's wonderful.
I'm not going to say goodbye to you.